It's really wonderful to have him here. He's a part of our public service speaker series tonight. But obviously, this is the more important session with our students, and so we're really glad to have you here. Dr. Gerges got his master's degree at the London School of Economics, I think maybe you remember, and his doctorate at Oxford. And he has been teaching at Harvard, Columbia, Oxford, and has been doing some research at Princeton for a couple of years. He is the professor of international studies and international affairs religious studies at Sarah Lawrence College, just outside, just north of New York City. He is one of the people who you see so frequently on television, whether it's CNN or various other programs, or in the press and a number of other areas. And is clearly a person who has been involved in his study for many years and done research in the Middle East. And so it's really a pleasure to have you here. The members of our class, I'm going to let them introduce themselves briefly to you. They are just finishing their first year and are headed out for some international studies. One of our students, in fact, is going to be in Afghanistan as a part of this summer's work. And others are going to be scattered pretty much around the world. So let me start with you, Katie, and then we'll proceed around. Okay.
My name is Katie Snodgrass. I'm originally from Arkansas, and I graduated from the University of Mississippi and worked for the mayor of the city there, and also ran an independent bookstore.
My name is John Spears. I'm from Arkansas. I worked for the State Department for a few years in Latin American affairs, and I'm going to Bolivia this summer to work for an NGO providing technical support to the Constituent Assembly to rewrite the Constitution.
And I'm Nancy Mencia, and I grew up in Las Vegas, and I got my master's degree in international relations from the University of Amsterdam, and a bachelor's degree also in international relations from the U.S. International University, and focused on post-conflict development, former Yugoslavia, and yep, I will be working for a microfinance firm in Holland this summer.
I'm Svetomira Svetova. I was born in Bulgaria. I'm a Dowdy scholar here at the University of Arkansas and an intern at the Clinton School, studying international relations.
Our newest professor, Dr. Myers, has just arrived today in Pittsburgh.
Yes.
Welcome.
Guys, get used to your three-line introduction.
So I do a variety of things, right? Environmental policy, social change.
My name is Erica Lawler. I'm originally from Massachusetts. Following college, I served 2 years in AmeriCorps, National Civilian Community Corps, and have worked on various community development projects since then. This summer, I will be in India working for a school, documenting their successes and providing a model for them.
Hi, I'm Scott Curran. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, where I practiced corporate law for 4 years before coming here to Clinton School.
My name is Dawn Zekas. I'm originally from South Dakota. I graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Biology, Social Work, and minor in Chemistry. Following college, I served in the AmeriCorps Vista program, working on service learning and civic engagement issues. And this summer, I will be interning with Clinton Foundation's HIV/AIDS initiative, working with the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States in Grenada.
Hi, I'm Amber Holloway. I'm from Arkansas. I spent 2 years in the AmeriCorps National Service Program doing crisis consultation and counseling at high school in Austin, Texas. And I worked for Teach for America while I was in undergrad. I worked as the ombudsman with the University of Texas. And now I'm here. I'll be studying this summer with James Lee Witt in Washington, D.C. He's the former FEMA director under President Clinton, and he works with various states and organizations doing crisis mitigation and consulting.
My name is David Morrissey. I'm a Kansas native. So my background has been in business management and human resources. In the nonprofit sector, I've done HIV/AIDS work, disabilities work, and public health initiatives. And this summer, I will be interning in Vietnam, based in Saigon, assisting grassroots organizations that serve the disabled.
My name is Ken Toll, and I wish I were a student.
You would be.
I'm a visiting professor, and I've been working with the students on their group project this term called the Practicum, looking in the Mississippi River Delta on a range of issues from housing, healthcare, leadership, economic development, and so forth. Some background in the past in the Middle East, running workshops in Jordan and Egypt and a few other countries in that area. And wish I could go back there again soon.
My name is Erica Hall. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Jamaica, and this summer I'll be working for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in the Minority Office.
What a fascinating, really.
Isn't it an
Really is
interesting?
fascinating.
I think you may have seen, I'm going to pass this around, but it's my copy, you can't keep it. So Professor Gerges is just, he had not even seen the book, by the way, when it...
It's coming out on the 8th of May, yeah, which is, I see the cover. This is great.
What I'd love for you to do is just talk sort of really for whatever, 10, 15 minutes, whatever you would like, about some of the things that are most interesting to you right now. And then why don't you just open it up for
yes.
why you speak.
I think I would be very much interested in your own questions, since we're going to have a presentation later on, because I know you might have many questions. Let me first start by saying, I know since 9/11 we have been quite focused on the so-called Al-Qaeda threat. 5 years later, I think, it seems to me that Al-Qaeda's threat is really more of a nuisance rather than a strategic threat in comparison to the other major difficulties in which we find ourselves today in the Middle East. That is, it seems to me that the very actions that we have taken since 9/11 to really stay the monster have basically, on the whole, produced the opposite results from the intended consequences. Let me try to just flesh out what I mean. As you know, as students of social and socioeconomic and political movements and social change, the first question to me, and I've done a great deal of research on fringe social movements in the Middle East. Really, I'm neither a historian nor a sociologist nor a political scientist. Oxford, one of the beauty about Oxford, I was really partly in the social sciences, partly in the humanities. My degree is melange of economics, politics, history, sociology. And the question in the 1990s, I did field research for 2 years. I had a MacArthur Fellowship in 1998, and I was one of those students who underestimated the strategic reach and lethal nature of Al-Qaeda. I wrote quite extensively, and you might say, why? Why did you, as a researcher, why did you underestimate the strategic reach of Al-Qaeda? Because I think the question for me and for many other scholars, to what extent does Al-Qaeda or did Al-Qaeda represent a social movement? We know that Al-Qaeda has the capacity to inflict a great deal of damage on us, on other societies, and I think 9/11 is a classic case in point. But even in the aftermath of 9/11, many of us and many people in our government did not ask the question, the critical question, the pivotal question. Yes, Al-Qaeda is dangerous. Yes, Al-Qaeda is cruel, that did and does Al-Qaeda represent a social movement in the sense, to what extent is Al-Qaeda viable as a social movement in the Muslim world? And the truth is, if you ask even some of the most, and I'm not really talking about now political arguments, whether you're a liberal or conservative, Al-Qaeda is a fringe, militant faction or a group. It's a tiny fringe. What do I mean by that? I mean, in the 1990s, we asked ourselves, it was Al-Qaeda, and you have other jihadist movements, militant movements in Egypt, in Pakistan. Al-Qaeda at the height of its power in the late 1990s did not number more than 5 or 6 or 7,000 fighters. That is basically the infrastructure of Al-Qaeda was around 5 or 6 or 7,000 fighters according to our intelligence services and our field research. Yet one single jihadist group in Egypt, Al-Jama'ah Islamiyya, it's called the Islamic group, numbered over 100,000 fighters in the late 1990s. And one of the mistakes we made was we equated basically efficacy with numbers. We said Al-Qaeda was not a social movement because it did not have the numbers. It did not have the large social infrastructure that other movements did. And I think we were wrong on this particular, because we know what 500 people can do. We know what 200 people can do, what 19 determined young men can do. But having seen the ability of Al-Qaeda to deliver a major attack against the American homeland, I think what American policymakers did, in particular what the Bush administration did not ask the question, yes, Al-Qaeda is dangerous, but to what extent does Al-Qaeda represent a viable social constituency in the Middle East? Does Al-Qaeda speak and represent major social constituencies in the Middle East, or is it really, or was it a fringe social movement which does not really represent a major social infrastructure in the region? And in my first book that I've written for Cambridge University Press 2 years ago, it's called The Far Enemy, Why Jihad Went Global. And I argued, very bluntly, where we made the mistakes by, underestimating the ability of Al-Qaeda to strike against the greatest power to exist in history, the United States. But I also showed that even though Al-Qaeda was and is lethal, Al-Qaeda does not represent any major social constituency, does not have an endurance power in the long term. And I followed the debates within the jihadist movement since the 1990s, and my understanding, the basic thesis of my book, The Far Enemy, Why Jihad Went Global, in fact, you cannot understand 9/11 except by understanding the civil war that was raging within the jihadist movement as a whole since the late 1990s. And in fact, one of the arguments I made in The Far Enemy is that 9/11 was a monstrous mutation. That is, the attack on the United States was part of the mutation of the jihadist movement which really produced Al-Qaeda. Because the bulk of jihadists, and the jihadist movement, which is Al-Qaeda, is a tiny fringe, represents, you might say, 300,000-400,000 fighters in Egypt and Algeria. Out of the 300,000-400,000 fighters, about 5,000 fighters decided to basically expand jihad and take the war to the far enemy. In the language of jihadists, you have since, and I can answer any questions I know, I'm simplifying a great deal, the jihadist movement was born in the mid-1970s. And from the mid-1970s until the late 1990s, the major focal of the jihadist movement was the near enemy. The near enemy being local Muslim. And as you know, in the 1990s, there was a major civil war in Egypt and Algeria between jihadists and the near enemy being pro-American governments. And that particular war ended with the strategic defeat of the jihadists in the late 1990s and 1997. And a major struggle erupted within the jihadist movement because the overwhelming number of jihadists decided to call it quits and basically say, listen, we lost. that a tiny fringe, including Al-Qaeda and the Egyptian Islamic Jihad, which is led by Ayman Zawahiri, decided to extend the war and take the war away from the near enemy into the far enemy. And I mean, the reason why I'm giving you this historical, sociological account, to give you an idea that, I mean, more than 95% of jihadists did not agree with Al-Qaeda's strategy to take the war against or to the far enemy being the United States and its Western allies. And that particular civil war within the jihadist movement that erupted in the late 1990s escalated after 9/11. And in the far enemy, I follow the debates that have erupted within the jihadist movement and in the Muslim world, and show that, in fact, this particular civil war now is becoming public, in particular after 9/11, because the overwhelming number of jihadists and Islamists believe that Al-Qaeda not only engendered the very future of the jihadist movement, but even the Muslim Ummah. And the basic arguments that I used there, I interviewed hundreds of Islamists. They say, well, look, if we could not defeat the near enemy, how could we take on the far enemy? I mean, this is to step on the toes of the greatest power. The reason why, if you understand, you cannot understand the politics and the strategy of Al-Qaeda except by understanding the strategy and the politics, the internal politics of the entire Islamist and jihadist movements, to understand this particular civil war that has been raging there. And the administration, the Bush administration, understandably, initially, instead of saying, well, listen, what is the most effective means? What are the most effective ways to really hammer a deadly nail in the coffin of Al-Qaeda? Since Al-Qaeda not only did not speak for all jihadists and Islamists, we know it did not, because the debate, the civil war, the overwhelming number of Muslim clerics, including radical Muslim clerics, came out publicly against it. I can't tell you how many times I have been asked, where are Muslim moderates? I am myself, people think I'm not a Muslim, so I go out of my way to really be fair, to flesh out the debates that are taking place in that part of the world. And really from day one, some of the most outstanding, some of the most mainstream, some of the most radical Muslim clerics came out against Al-Qaeda and 9/11. This is part of the record. There's nothing, all you have to do, that what the administration said, it was convinced the administration that Al-Qaeda was part not only of a monstrous mutation within an ideologically militant movement like the jihadist movement. The Bush administration convinced itself Al-Qaeda is a monstrous mutation of an entire culture and civilization. There is a rotten gene out there. And the only way to defeat Al-Qaeda is to pluck the gene out of that particular culture. It was convinced, and I don't think the president is very humble when it comes to foreign affairs and international relations, but some people around the president told the president since day one that you must wipe the state clean. This is not just an isolated act against the United States. It's not just a monstrous attack by a fringe movement. Mr. President, the most effective way to slay this particular monster, because this monster does not speak for this, is to really use what I call internal encirclement, instead of the same term we used in the Cold War, deterrence. Is that what really the most effective way is to really internally encircle this particular fringe movement, really from within, work within social forces in order to really hammer a deadly nail in that particular coffin. The administration decided to extend the war against terror. Really, my critique is not ideological, truly, because this is not about ideology. This is about, I'm talking about the empirical, and this particular narrative now, several books have come out, and I think it's becoming part of, finally, in the last few years, whether it's Peter Bergen, or Stephen Simon, or Daniel Benjamin, those people worked within the National Security Council, the Bush administration, have written books that have come out recently, is that this particular assessment now is gaining, ground, because finally we are beginning to write the books, and I think we are beginning to debate, the whole notion of what does Al-Qaeda represent and what does 9/11 represent. But to to make the story short, the president and the administration decided to expand the war on terror. And not only expand the war against jihadists, which is fine, but expand the war against rogue regimes, and basically try to transform the region to plant a Sunni democracy in the heart of the Arabian desert. And as you all know, that particular project is still unfolding. In my new book, what I try to do is I trace the journey of the jihadists from the first generation in the 1970s. And the first generation really focused basically on the near enemy. There was no, when I went to do research in the Middle East in the 1990s, I could not find any literature on the far enemy. There was no narrative, no text, no record by the jihadists on the far enemy. And this is really was part of the reason why we did not take the threats of Osama Bin Laden very seriously at the end of the 1990s, because most of the jihadists basically focused on the near enemy. The fight was against the near enemy. There was no such, developed discourse against the far enemy, that is the head of the snake, the United States and its Western allies. Jihadis were mainly preoccupied with fighting the near enemy. And the second chapter, I focused a bit on the second generation of jihadis, that is the Afghan Arabs, basically the Afghan generation. And the third generation is the Iraq generation, which is a direct product of the American-led invasion and occupation of Iraq. Now we have a third generation, a generation that is much more insidious, much more dangerous, much bloodier than even the second generation. You even have the second generation now, the Afghan Arabs, who are saying to Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, take it easy, man. You are really harming our interests. This is public debate. Osama Bin Laden and Zawahiri are coming out and saying, what are you doing? You are basically damaging the, global jihad. The militants I have interviewed in the last 2-3 years, I went back and they're themselves, fascinated and terrified by the methodology of the new generation, the Iraq generation. And I want you to know, even our intelligence services now, I go to Washington sometimes and I expect them to tell me, let's talk about Osama Bin Laden, and they're talking about the next generation, the Sunni Iraqis. They are focusing, and it does not cross our minds that when and how and why did or have Sunni Iraqis have become now a new generation of threat to American security. What I'm trying to suggest is that what I said earlier, I said, the English Parliament, I said that Osama Bin Laden and al-Zawahiri are hibernating deep underground and going deeper, and really it's now more of a label of Qaeda, that the new generation, the new threats to America now are extremely real and serious. We find ourselves in the heart of the world of Islam, in Afghanistan, at the margin of the Muslim world, in any way trying to put down Afghanistan. Now we find ourselves in the heart of the Arab world, in the heart of the historical seat of the Caliphate. I can't tell you the damage that has been done. I cannot tell you the extent of the rage that exists in the region. I can't tell you, I go to small towns, I can name towns to you, young kids, 14, 15 years old. They're looking for $10 to take the bus to the Syrian Iraqi borders to join the fight against the new imperialists. I joke to my students, I say I can easily recruit 10,000 kids if I have, $100,000 just to get them into the Syrian Iraqi borders, just to show you the extent of anger against. Of course, it's the way we see it. It's a project of democracy, it's a project of civilization, of liberalization. But in their eyes, and I'm talking about really across the board, it's a colonial project, it's an imperial project. And this particular threat to me now is really real. It's serious because we're facing a major dilemma. The dilemma is the longer we stay in Iraq, the more our very presence is pouring fuel on a raging fire. It's really making more enemies. Even the Secretary of Defense himself argues that we are creating more enemies, and I'm really quoting our own security forces. I don't have to interview. And if we leave, make no doubts about it, Iraq would plunge overnight into major sectarian strife. And the question is, I mean, this is the choices facing American foreign policy now. What do you do? How do you extract your forces out of this? I mean, this particular circumstance in Iraq. How do you minimize the damage? How do you maintain your credibility, strategic credibility? Because I think, regardless of what you think of this adventure, I think leaving overnight, packing and leaving, would truly affect our ability to execute foreign policy decisions for many years to come. We know that the defeat of the Soviet Union in Afghanistan was one of the major reasons for empowering jihadists and basically for taking this particular tragic road, fateful road against the United States. And the question is, what do you do? How do we extract ourselves from the heart of the Muslim Ummah? How do we minimize the damage? How do we... And the truth is, we can talk about options, and our options are very limited and very scary indeed.
So your argument, Fawaz, would be that, actually, I think most of us have said that Iraq was a vast mistake, but that the United States should have focused most of its efforts on Afghanistan and trying to deal with the protection of the Taliban for Osama Bin Laden. Your argument would be actually that itself also would have been a mistake, and you could have handled it ever so much better by not staying away entirely and dealing with some other
points. I mean, by the way, I was really shocked by how little criticism there was in the Muslim world when the United States attacked Afghanistan. I mean, it was impressive. But even though, and I'm talking about, I mean, I'm not just talking about content, I'm talking about the clergy, the clerical, the religious establishment. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. Is that even though they were disappointed, even though they believed that the United States did not really have was not legitimate in attacking Afghanistan just to kill Osama Bin Laden and the murderers, there was an implicit understanding that the United States had the right to defend its citizens, had the right to pursue Osama Bin Laden and al-Zawahiri. And if you look back, and I do in my book, I mean, I call the aftermath, I trace the responses of the dominant religious voices in the Muslim world on October the 8th and after. There was no major row, no major outcry against the United States, no major. Let me just give you one example. Yusuf Qardawi, Sheikh Yusuf Qardawi, Qardawi, Yusuf Joseph Qardawi, one of the leading Muslim conservative. He is every week on Al Jazeera, 50 million viewers, highly respected. And one of the American chaplains wrote to Yusuf Qardawi and said, what do you think that American soldiers, Muslim American soldiers, do you think that they have any kind of the right to join the American forces in the war against Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan? And guess what Yusuf Qardawi wrote back? Yes, they are American citizens, and yes, the government has a legitimate cause to defend us. This is a quote-unquote legitimate war. Yusuf Qardawi is a highly conservative. This is part of the public record. Yusuf Qardawi now, just to give you an idea what I mean by that, in the last 2 years, he's calling for jihad, not only against American military forces in Iraq, but also against American civilians in Iraq. They are legitimate targets because they are occupying a Muslim country. And regardless if they are civilians, they are serving American colonial apparatus. So even our invasion of Afghanistan did not elicit a major public outcry in the Muslim world. And this is by itself a testament to the fact. And by 2002, 2003, I don't need to tell you, Al-Qaeda was really in a coma. I mean, almost every single lieutenant that had a say or a hand in the 9/11 conspiracy basically was either killed, captured, or arrested. I mean, truly, I mean, the war was winnable. Winnable because, I mean, we had a target. You could really hammer away at the target. You could really create. And not only that, what's fascinating, and even the administration, they never tell us, every single major, I mean, some of us call every single major breakthrough against Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, every single one was not a direct response to the American military power, but a result of multilateral cooperation between the United States security services and our allies. Whether Pakistan, Emirates, Saudi Arabia, all the major breakthrough against Al-Qaeda between October 2001 and basically the result of multilateral cooperation. This is part of the public record. I mean, see, and this is a testament to how useful such an alliance against Al-Qaeda. And by 2002, 2003, Al-Qaeda was truly in a coma, just basically trying to survive, desperately trying to survive, because there were no takers for the Muslim world, of course. And here were the administration, and of course, the administration. I mean, the truth is we lost the debate. We lost the debate before, I mean, March 2003, because the administration was able to convince the American public that there was a link, operational link between Al-Qaeda and Iraq, that Iraq represented an element. And again, truly, this is not an ideological, I mean, I go out of my way. It's not about scoring debating points. This is the administration saying, we want to win this particular war. But what war? Against whom? I mean, let's define the enemy. You want to win the war against Saddam Hussein, or you want to win the war against Al-Qaeda? And now, the entire thing now, we're in a different... So, in a way, even though I would say I would have done it differently, but going to Afghanistan, actually on the 8th of October, I had a piece I wrote by the New York Times where I said, we had no choice but to go to Afghanistan. Even though I was skeptical, but because we really had to respond to such a monstrous attack against the homeland. But of course, that brings us into a different chapter. Yes?
Sturgis, you, in some of your writings have argued that there should be a timetable for withdrawal from Iraq. Can you speak to what a withdrawal would look like? And I guess my second question is, you talked again about Al-Qaeda being a fringe and not having a strategic, being a strategic threat to the United States in terms of our military capacity and that kind of thing. But can you talk about Mr. Khan in Pakistan, elements of Mr. Khan in Pakistan in terms of the proliferation question and the relationship between Al-Qaeda and that fringe in Pakistan, given that nuclear proliferation issue?
That's an excellent question. I mean, I think, first of all, yes, I've been extensively on, and really we are desperately trying to think of options. I mean, the extent of desperation now is that we are calling for the partitioning of Iraq. Show you how desperate we are. This is really desperation, because anyone who knows the area, and partitioning Iraq will create multiple civil wars instead of one particular. But this is, I mean, it's fine as an intellectual device to think of options, but this is the extent of where we are. And the administration, by the way, is just really on a daily basis, and we are trying to cope with the evolving, unfolding security situation. They don't have a strategy. We don't have by now. That's not. I think the reason why I think that you cannot back and leave overnight. I mean, you can, because you're going to have full sectarian strife. I mean, the country is on the brink, stands on the brink of a major sectarian strife. And you cannot stay permanently, because our very presence is really, and I'm not just concerned about Iraq now, I'm concerned about, I mean, the neighboring countries, our entire posture and interests are affected. I think a rational, common-sensical option would be to tell Iraqis, well, look, we owe you. But you also owe your own people, you owe your own country. We'll give you a year and a half maximum, and you must really find a way out of this. It's your country, it's your future. We're not gonna, we have done our best. We will deepen our socioeconomic and involvement in the country, but we're out. We are not planning to have permanent bases. Everyone I talk to in the Middle East believes there's a conspiracy. We're there because we want to seize the oil fields, we want to stay. And the truth is, we don't know. I mean, do we know that the administration, whether the administration wants to have permanent bases? I mean, we have received so many, just follow different signals. There's 17 bases, 14 bases, 6 bases. We're building the biggest embassy in the world, in Iraq. I mean, the administration needs to be transparent about this particular. Does the administration intend to build permanent bases in Iraq? Are we planning to stay in Iraq permanently? There's the fact that we had to leave Saudi Arabia. As you know, according to Paul Wolfowitz, one of the reasons why we went to Iraq, because our bases were, we had to leave Saudi Arabia, and we did. We have about 480 American troops trained in Saudi Arabia. We had about 20,000 mission. That was one of the major grievances of Osama Bin Laden against the United States. So by having an orderly timetable for pulling out American forces to Iraq in 1 year and a half, telling the Iraqis, I mean, this could basically serve as a catalyst to awaken the Iraqis and really show that we really are serious about leaving the country. We're not there to stay. We are not there to have permanent bases. And instead of really spending, $80 billion on the military, hopefully we'll invest. I mean, I don't need to tell you, we have spent about $300 billion so far. Fewer dollars than that, 278 billion. Out of it, less than $10 billion on socioeconomic infrastructure. Less than 10 billions out of the $300 billion. I would rather have, the $80 billion, this is our moral commitment. Ideally, in an ideal situation, that we are, and just to answer you, I think this is a serious question. I don't mean ever to suggest that Al-Qaeda is not a threat, that there is no, the idea of non-conventional weapons and terrorism is a serious question. And even President Clinton, by the way, was very much concerned about it. As you know, in the last 2 years, he basically almost $10 billion, he fought for $10 billion in order to find a way about proliferation. This is a serious situation. The truth is, I believe that, and I hope I'm wrong, that they are aiming for a big, show next summer. What really surprises me is that why we have not witnessed a major suicide bombings in the United States. It's an easy thing to do, right? They can very easily do that. And the more I think about it, and this is just speculation, even the FBI 2 years ago, this is all expecting suicide bombings to migrate to the homeland, because this is the device now to comment. And I think because Al-Qaeda, the big show, and that's why I fear next time, how will the next attack be? Will it be a dirty bomb? Will it be kind of, and yes, Pakistan presents a major, remember, it's one of the most unstable countries in the Muslim world. It's unstable because of the tensions between the Islamists and the regime, because of the influence of the radical clergy in the country, because of the links with Al-Qaeda and Taliban. It's a serious question. But we don't have answers, of course. This is one of the major projects, one of the leading schools, intelligence schools in the United States, had a conference on this particular question a few weeks ago in California. Social networks and social scientists and nuclear proliferation and relationship between social scientists and nuclear bombs and Al-Qaeda. So it's a major concern.
I was just wondering what your insight is as to why exactly the United States doesn't incorporate that into their kind of post-conflict development strategy, focusing on the socioeconomic development rather than pull out a timeline. Because if you look at the EU, in trying to incorporate the Eastern European states, or even trying to figure out how to deal with Turkey and dealing with accession talks, there's straight guidelines onto how, as to what to follow, and to how to create a stable economic, political, social structure. And that's actually more of an incentive to development, and they don't put it as an opposition like the other nations that we deal with.
Yes. As you know, I probably was unfair to the administration, because I think there's a debate taking place, unfolding within the administration about the most effective means to invest in the socioeconomic and political reconstruction of Iraq. There are many schools. I mean, initially, one of the reasons why we hear the criticisms that the Defense Department, and ironically, talking about socioeconomic development, the project of socioeconomic development was given to the Defense Department and to the State Department in Iraq. That basically they seized the project of development and reconstruction from the State Department, and it was celebrated as a major victory for the Defense Department. And when Paul Wolfowitz was asked by our American congressman about this, he said, well, quote unquote, Iraq is a wealthy country, it does not need any money for reconstruction. They really went to Iraq. I mean, the idea, and I know it's very easy to sit down and talk about it because we have, I don't think for the morning after, they did not have any kind of a blueprint for the morning after. They thought that somehow, as soon as Saddam Hussein is out of the picture, Iraqis will dance in the streets and celebrate and embrace us as liberators. And some of them did. I mean, some of them did. We overstayed our... I mean, let me give you the idea about the debate that's taking place. In fact, I had dinner a few 2 weeks ago with a person in the Defense Department who was in charge of the socioeconomic construction of Iraq. And one of the arguments he said that really the security situation is so brutal that it really has not enabled U.S. officials and officers on the ground to really pursue. In fact, when the Congress allocated about $18.4 billion for socioeconomic reconstruction, most of the money were taken away and given to the security forces, to train the security forces. It was not really invested. So the argument is, and now, as you know, some of the reports have come out, you cannot invest in socioeconomic reconstruction while you have a civil war. And they're saying it's all being wasted. There's a civil war. The truth is, I mean, whether it's low intensity civil strife, and but I mean, as you know, the administration did not ask any money now for Iraq for next year, so we have no money for socioeconomic reconstruction. And I would still argue that there's something, and I don't know, I might be wrong, please don't. I think American officials tend to believe that somehow you cannot sell a project of socioeconomic investment or reconstruction of huge scales to the American public. For example, it's easier to sell them that we need to invest on the military. We need $100 billion this year, but we cannot tell the American public we need $80 billion or $100 billion to invest in. They seem to believe that this is the American public would not buy it. This is unacceptable. There's also this sense, I don't know how accurate this, but this is my instinct tells me is that it's not part of the mindset of the American foreign policy establishment. The idea really is that somehow you don't get instant returns. This is you invest in the long term. I think, I mean, the notion of the Marshall Plan, and it's not part of the daily language. And that on Iraq, I mean, there are many factors. And to show you the extent of desperation, the reason why I am and many others are extremely anxious, because it tells me that the administration is giving up. When the administration does not really ask for money for social and economic reconstruction of the country, something wrong. On the one hand, you want to stay for several years. On the other hand, you don't ask for money. Because we know that the security situation is intimately, closely linked with the deteriorating socioeconomic situation. I mean, just a footnote. 60% of Sunni Arabs are unemployed. Unemployment is almost 60% in some areas in the Sunni Arab areas. I mean, this is where the insurgency is raging. Yes?
Looking forward down the road, if there's an election and a change in administration and we're still mired there, it seems reasonable to expect. What possibilities do you think there are then for constructive action down the road? If we look about 2 or 3 years down the road, what would you recommend is feasible?
I think that's really the way to really start thinking about it, because obviously the administration is planning to leave. I mean, this particular last to the next president, the next administration. That's how it seems. They know they cannot afford to just leave. In particular, President Bush is determined. The think there's 50-50% chance that the situation could go other way. And also my hope that the administration, even though it's staying there for the next 2-3 years, that we at least reduce our presence by at least 50% in the next year. So the next president will not have, a huge, big mess on his or her hands. And thirdly, I would start thinking really of involving regional players in the scenario. The only problem is the administration has no credibility either internationally or regionally. And that's why I believe really, I was truly, and that, I think if Kerry had been elected, I think he would have been able to think about it, again, not really from any ideology, in a more refreshing way, because I think his credibility would have been online. I think he would have been able to appeal to the international community, would have taken some decisive, and it's not his, his future presidency does not depend on it as it does on this president. So I think reduce our forces. I'm hoping that we'll have fewer than 50,000 soldiers when a new president comes. We'll begin to rely on regional powers. Hopefully a new government will take shape in Iraq, even though it seems to me that the insurgency is very viable. It's as strong as ever. I don't need to tell you. And what's really alarming to us, 3 developments in particular are extremely alarming, and hopefully will flesh out, is that sectarian killings are increasing. We have on average between 20 and 50 sectarian killings on a daily basis. Those are all brutally. Some of them are beheaded yesterday, every day, just follow the news. We have a de facto partition in the country, even though it's not being reported as. We have a major population movement in the country from mixed areas. Shias and Sunnis are moving away from the mixed areas into the conflict, and this is really a major. As you know, the Vice President of Iraq mentioned 100,000 families, that is 500,000 Iraqis, since February 22nd, have left their mixed neighborhoods into. Most of the areas are not mixed, but when you're talking about 500,000, this is a major number. And thirdly, and this is the most alarming development for me, is that we are seeing hardening of the sectarian divide in Iraq. And I think the sectarian divide between Shias and Sunnis is being deeply hardened, even though the politicians are trying very hard, or trying to convince us they're trying very hard. On the mass level, we are seeing the hardening of the Shia sectarian divide throughout the world.
If there is de facto partitioning going on among sectarian separations, and it's naturally occurring right now, why do you say then that partitioning the country by sex would actually increase more civil war if it seems like people are voluntarily at this point separating each other anyways?
It's a big question. I think this is one of the arguments that's being advanced by the proponents of the notion of either civil war or division of Iraq. Take Lebanon, for example. In Lebanon, we witnessed almost 1 million people who moved to one. I think ultimately, this low intensity civil side, will exhaust itself. That's how either one side will win this particular conflict, either the Shias will win the conflict, or basically all sides will be exhausted. All I'm suggesting is this would be a disastrous choice for the United States to either propose or promote or advance, because I think this will reinforce all the conspiracies that exist in the region, that we are there in order to control oil fields, we are there in order to control the destiny of Arabs and Muslims, we are there in order to weaken Arabs, we are there because for the sake of Israel, we are there. This is the whole notion of what really the popular wisdom in the region. We weren't there in order to weaken Iraq. Iraq was the eastern gate to the Arab world. This is the conventional wisdom. Iraq has always been the eastern defense line of the Arab world. We went there because we want to serve the interests of Israel. We went there because we want to get rid of the Sunnis and give the Shiites a voice. And this is, and who are we to play any God? Because I mean, this is not even, that's why I'm suggesting the most effective, really, the most, from my point of view, is that for us to really allow Iraqis to really have the space on the time to debate and argue and fight, by saying to the Iraqis, listen, it's your country, it's your future, we're really not there to, we have no vested interests. You decide what you want.
If they came to that conclusion on their own, do you think that that would be something that people would accept, or?
Well, the truth is, it's out of our hands, and even now, what's really, as a student of the history of the Middle East now, it's fascinating to me that the United States finds itself in the same position as Britain did in the 1920s. We are actually being at the mercy of local players. We lost the Sunnis when we went to Iraq. Now we are losing the Shiites because we are trying to exert pressure on the Shiites not to kill the Sunnis. And ultimately, I can imagine a scenario whereby both Sunnis and Shiites chasing the Americans out of Iraq, because ultimately they have to kiss and make up, and they have to find that. And that's how usually great powers, colonial powers, find themselves. And the commander of the British forces said, I would not be surprised in 2 years that we will be chased to the Iraqi borders. The only way for us to go through Iran out of the Iraq prison. The point, what I'm trying to say, please don't think that we are controlled by, we are not in control. If you go to, I think if you want an idea, just really a glance. Some of you think that American soldiers or American are on every corner in Iraq. But you see American soldiers. If you enter Iraq from Jordan, there's 500 kilometers between Amman and between Baghdad. You don't see a single American on the road. The mercy militias actually. And every 50 kilometers is controlled by one militia, depending on the roads. And you're told by the chauffeur, the Iraqi chauffeur, here you're in the lands of the tribe of Abu Muzaffar. This is the tribe, so you're at the mercy. And even in Baghdad, American forces venture out to their fortresses really when either they want to go on a mission to help their Iraqi counterparts or attack insurgents. And every time they venture out of their fortresses, they are wildly, terribly attacked by insurgents. You're talking about an average between 50 and 80 attacks on a daily basis, even though that American soldiers don't venture out of their fortresses. So you can imagine that somehow every time you see an American, unit on the streets, either being attacked or potentially will be attacked, and can you imagine the extent of, this is urban warfare. And the idea, and that's the whole notion of debate, is that if you are really serious about, managing the country, you needed about 400,000 soldiers, 500,000, because in 1990, 1991, the United States had 500,000, and we had about other 200, 300, so about 800,000 coalition forces. The war in 1990, 1991. And I think if we were serious about, if we had if we had the vision, we would have, we needed to send probably 400,000. They're not American forces there. You don't find them. You don't see it. It's just, you can imagine. Baghdad is about 6 million people. What does it take to control the city? You have 6 million people. We have, on the Shia side, you have Muqtada al-Sadr. And on the Sunni side, you have Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi and the Sunni nationalists. And you're really, in a way, which would you choose? Muqtada al-Sadr? Well, I'll take Muqtada al-Sadr any time for Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi, but it's a different situation. So you can imagine the predicament of American soldiers and how. So no, we're not in control. No, we are not really managing the situation. No, there is no stability. The United States truly is at the mercy of local players. And in fact, unfortunately, some of the local players whom we arm and finance are using American arms in order to really, garner more power and tarnish the reputation of the United States further in the public.
I was wondering if you could speak very briefly to the role of women in the current conflict in terms of being suicide bombers and the apparent surprise and impact it's had on the United States strategy at fighting the war.
Again, the reason I come back question, I said that we really find ourselves in a highly volatile and fragile situation. I mean, even the Palestinians, you have Palestine under occupation, there's a war going on between Palestinians and Israelis. We have seen more women suicide bombs in Iraq than we have seen in Palestinian battles. It's truly horribly, alarming this thing. In fact, the first suicide bomber, the second suicide bomber in Iraq was a woman after the American invasion. And this gives you an idea about the extent of rage and the ability of insurgents and militants and terrorists, including Al-Qaeda. And the idea is we try to portray the conflict here between the United States and Al-Qaeda. It's strong, it's false. Al-Qaeda does not represent more than 3, 4, 5% of the insurgents. This is according to American military commanders. The overwhelming number of fighters in Iraq are either Sunni religious fighters or nationalist fighters, tribal fighters. Most of them, because, when you get rid of 400,000, 500,000 personnel army. So in many ways, when you have 60% unemployment, when you disband an army, a very proud army, we tend to confuse Saddam Hussein as an army, and surely if I make like all of us, our careers invested, our pride, those officers who fought, who were injured, you tell them you're nobodies, and you just lose everything. You can imagine. Those are fighting really, truly, talk to American commanders, they tell you we're facing truly a very organized, very lethal, very deadly insurgency. And insurgency or resistance. I'm sorry, I should use the word resistance. In many parts of Iraq, it's resistance, not insurgency. Even though we label it insurgency because, some of their actions are horrible, terroristic. And, of course, you have Al-Qaeda, and now it seems to me another alarming development. Al-Qaeda seems to have created an indigenous space. It amazes me initially the overwhelming number of the fighters under the command of Mus'ab al-Zarqawi were foreigners, Jordanians, Syrians, Yemenis, Saudis. Now, the overwhelming leadership of Al-Qaeda in Iraq now is homegrown Iraqis. In fact, the 3, 4 suicide bombers who went to Jordan were basically Iraqis. And to show you the transformation or mutation of Al-Qaeda in Iraq into an indigenous Iraqi. And this gives you an idea why we're saying now the next generation of suicide bombers will likely be, I hope I'm wrong, Sunni Iraqis, as opposed to Sunni Saudis or Sunni Yemenis or Sunni Egyptians under the command. And the question of women, I think it's becoming fascinating because it's becoming a factor. I would not say it's a major factor, but it is a factor in the equation. And I don't know how this particular question